This is not the first color tutorial you've seen, nor should it be the last, but hopefully this one will show you a much more direct and immediately applicable method that I use every time when dealing with colors. I assume you already know the basic terminology and gist of color theory, okay? Here's a super quick recap in case you aren't. We good? Alright, let's go. Right, so here's the drawing that I was working on. Now, the first question you might be asking is, how do I know to pick these colors for the drawings? Like, let's get real pedantic here, okay? Like, why did I choose this specific tone for the paper instead of like a white or a cool blue? Well, the first and boring half of the answer is reference. Lots of it. Orange for the pins, orange for the bow tie, dark brown for the writing on the paper, etc, etc. While you can just go by memory and intuition, I would always advise just referencing stuff if you aren't sure. Especially if the subject in question is like a major element of the drawing. You can get away with small bits like a background problem or a haircut, but you best make sure you're getting that skin or lying tone correctly, right? We reference pose and anatomical detail, so why wouldn't we do the same for color as well? With enough time and mileage, eventually you'll be able to just pick the hue right from muscle memory and start experimenting to cater to your own personal preference. But if you're new, always use reference. Then comes the other half. You know it, you love it. Stylization. Airs don't have these colors, water doesn't look like this, reality isn't this whimsy and magical. But it sure looks awesome, and in the art world, that's all you have to care about ultimately. And reality is boring anyway. A lot of times it's actually more appealing to exaggerate the universe and warp things to cater toward your own taste. But this is definitely something you need a decent amount of experience at to really start playing with. If you're new or approaching a new subject, it is always safer and usually wiser to use reference, because your brain is being bombarded with a bunch of questions and new information, okay? Like, take things easy and opt for the less exciting but very clear route first to get the hang of things. And speaking of boring, while the colors shown here are definitely very bright and rich, without the render lighting they actually look like this, which is pretty tame and kind of dull, right? And that is 100% intentional because A drawing composed of super loud and bold color is not particularly nice to look at. Like, seriously, this is just eye bleach here. B, being prudent with color gives you a lot more headroom when it's time to render. Like, say if you use pure white for the papers here, well, definitely still quote-unquote accurate to reality, is really just gonna make it borderline impossible to render in any lighting condition because it's max brightness. I literally can't shine anything on it. It's always easier in the long run to start in the middle so you have ample room to play around and adjust accordingly if need be later. And lastly, colors are very, very relative and context dependent. You don't actually need a super bright and colorful hue to make something appear bright and colorful. Most of the time the trick is to make sure the colors around it are giving it the proper space and range to shine. Like, I don't need to crank the value on this blue to 11 when I can get the same but superior result by making sure the tones around it are dialed down properly. So to quickly recap when choosing colors, right? Keep in mind the following. Experienced artists will often go by intuition, mileage, and just sheer preferences, while beginners are strongly advised to use reference first, okay? And avoid hues that are too extreme and intense, so no eye bleach or pure black or white. Now, of course, exception applies to just about every in art, but I mean, really, nothing is perfect, and would you prefer the advice that works 9% of the time or only a fraction of that? Oh, and lastly, it might be very tempting to look at these sliders and assume hue, saturation, value all exist independently and you can just treat them as 3 separate knobs to play around with. But that is a rookie mistake. They all affect each other because, you know, they're 3 properties that make up color itself. Like, some tones are just naturally darker than others because God deemed it to be so. This is important because when picking colors, you do genuinely have to keep in mind the entirety of it. Like, if I'm picking an orange hue, I should consider its saturation value as well before actually putting down the canvas. It's not mandatory in digital art, as you can always tweak things later, but it's a good habit to develop because it cuts down on a lot of meandering around when just trying to find the right tone to use. Alright, so that's how to pick colors, but what about making sure they all fit together so your drawing actually looks cohesive? Well, if you're keeping your hues relatively desaturated, you're kind of halfway there already. Just check out this amazing bit by Marco if you want a deeper explanation, okay? But also, less is more. From my experience, the less color used, the easier it will be to harmonize them, and also paradoxically, the more color you'll actually be able to squeeze onto the canvas. Like, while you can't do much with just this brownish tone, if you start to play around with 3 properties, all of a sudden you're gonna have a lot of colors that will just naturally fit together because they're still technically the same general color. Knowing this, you can actually just use like 3 to 4 tones for like 60, I guess, or 70% of the drawing. And the rest you can do whatever, because so long as the overall vibes are established, the little sprinkle of bright and fun colors won't take away from that sense of cohesiveness at all. Harmony has less to do about the actual colors itself, and I think more about how you are distributing them on your drawing, honestly. Like, start from big to small, okay? 1 to 3 main hue for the big elements, you know, the wall, the floor, the sky, the clothing, the hair, etc. And then like 4 to 10 secondaries, 1 for the medium-sized stuff, the curtains, the furniture, the clothing, the accessory. And lastly, the small sprinkles for those final little touches. If you've done the first two part correctly, you should generally be free to use whatever tone you so desire, so long as its value is respected. And respect better be given, because the values are critically important. Every drawing should have a hue layer filled with white for easy value checks, and make sure everything is clearly defined, because while hue and saturation determines how pretty your colors are, value determines whether it's even readable to begin with. It is the bedrock of good colors, okay? Seriously, do not sleep on value. And just as a 2 cent, these little color charts that you see all the time whenever the subject is brought up, I strongly believe they should just be treated as a polite suggestion. Their main issue is that anyone that actually understands what they're trying to convey does not need it to begin with. If you've been paying attention, you probably will have noticed how hue is actually the least important property when it comes to getting good colors. Saturation and value is the one doing all of the hard work, while hue is largely personal preferences. Like, you pick the hue that you like and you think would fit in the drawing, and you tweak its other two properties to make it harmonize and play nice with the other colors. And while these things just completely ignores both saturation and value in favor of only showing you the parts that doesn't even matter that much, so honestly, if you want to learn actual practical usage of color, just reference your favorite piece of art, okay? Like films, shows, books, or comics, which by the way is one called Humor Request. It is an online webcomic with a really clever premise and amazing artwork. Worth a read and reference, okay? I'm not being paid to show though, I really like it. Like, why look at dry, boring theories when you can just reference stuff that's directly applicable? I mean, just look at those colors. So, whenever I need to pick a color, I always try and find if I can snag an existing color in the canvas before picking a brand new one. Context matter, of course. Sometimes you do just need to pick a new color because, you know, there's nothing on the canvas at the moment. But if you can get away with it, try and recycle stuff first before introducing a brand new color into the canvas. Remember, less is more. Like here, I chose this fluffy beige tone for the board with a nice chocolate brown for the outer edges, which I then just reused for the tree and paper prop because the context allowed for it. Plus, it looks believable enough anyway. And in art, if something looks good enough, it's probably good enough. Regardless, if I'm stealing an existing color or picking a new one from preferences or references, which is a side note, by the way, if you aren't familiar with the subject, you should always reference stuff first, okay? Juggling colors gets overwhelming very easily, and if you're just guessing stuff all willy-nilly, and it gets out of control fast, okay? Like, please, oh my god, just don't make this very difficult thing even more difficult, okay? Just reference stuff you don't know what it looks like. Anyway, regardless of whatever colors I'm using, I always make sure its saturation values are not too extreme. Basically, nothing above 90 or below 10 on the meter. It doesn't take much effort to occasionally glance down or over at the reading when we pick a color, okay? And it's just a good habit to develop, as it'll save you a lot of pain when it's time to render. Make sure to occasionally check your overall value as well to make sure everything is nice and clear. Very important, remember that. Then it's just rinse and repeat. Whatever new object I want to plop down, I either borrow and tweak a tone from its neighbor, or I pick a brand new one from my references. I try and splash in some contrasting hue and overall fun tones here and there to maintain a sense of balance as well. Overall, from experience, I find that you don't actually need that much color to get a colorful drawing. Of course, I'm using the term color very loosely here, because again, one color can branch out into multiple different ones, still under the same general umbrella. I know it sounds overwhelming on paper, like how am I going to be able to keep track of 20 plus different colors, but in actuality, if we just group everything into their general color family, it's actually not that bad. They're still different from each other, but not enough for your brain to actually view it as such from afar. And if it looks good enough, who cares how many colors are actually on the canvas if they already have the same general tone anyway? At the end of the day, as important as these theories are, and as much as they have definitely helped me a ton, and I sure as hell hope it will for you as well, otherwise I've wasted my time making this vid, color is still one of, if not the most subjective fundamental, and you're still gonna have to go out there and make a bunch of messy drawing with messy color before you set on a path that you really enjoy. Because while on paper, literally every color on the color wheel is a good color. Just like how we all have our own ways of drawing something, the same applies to color too. We all have our own preferences for the sort of tones we like to use and assign to the stuff that we're drawing. This, unfortunately, can't be taught through a simple video or even multiple one due to how subjective it is. It is a matter of pure mileage, not knowledge. So go paint something, and thanks for watching.